So I'm going to talk about my trip to India. Some of you guys were in class last week and knew that I was gone on a trip. Obviously, if I'm not here, it's because something is terribly wrong. In this case, it's because something was terribly wrong. I was in a totally different part of the world. And I've been looking forward to this trip for a long time. I've been knowing that I was going for about 6 months. And I found out that my friends were getting married, and they invited me, and so I went. And I thought, India, I've never been. I've wanted to go for a long, long time. And of course, in my mind, thinking about going to India is probably about the same as your guys'. It's like, ooh, it's going to be super like spiritual. I'm going to do yoga and meditate the whole time. It's going to be just like a really life-changing experience. It was a life-changing experience, but none of that stuff happened. I mean, I meditated because I meditate everywhere that I go, but it wouldn't have mattered if I took a trip to Oklahoma or India. I would have meditated about the same amount. I took one yoga class. It was the teacher had a name tag on because it was at the hotel that I was staying at. He was pretty good, but I've had better yoga teachers in California, honestly. I think it was like my 4th or 5th yoga class, and I was no better at yoga in India than I am in America. But it was a really amazing trip. Has anybody been to an Indian wedding before? So you know what I'm talking about. It is the most ridiculous party that will ever exist. And I don't know if I ever want to go to another one. I'm sure that nothing can top the one that I went to, because I think even for an Indian wedding, it was like over the top amazing. But it was basically just like wedding. It was a party for an entire week. It's like being on a cruise, except you're in one place and it's all Indian food. And I never want to eat Indian food again for the rest of my life. I had so many dosas. I had dosa for like every single meal. And the dad joke that I am allowed, just one dad joke per meditation class, is that I overdosed while I was in India. You're welcome. So what I'm going to talk about, it doesn't really have a central thrust, but this is just kind of what I do if I go on a trip. I'm just thinking about what I experienced. The idea that everybody kind of expects India to be a certain way, or we always have these preconceived notions about things and places and people. Sifu Brown, my teacher, always used to think, he would say about martial arts, he said, he's very white like me, he would think that if you were Asian, you were automatically better at martial arts than him. And if you're Indian, you're automatically better at meditating than him. And he said, and this has been my experience, he'd say, when I went to Asia, and like him, I've been to China and Japan to practice and visit and go on martial arts pilgrimages. He said, in Asia, people are just as bad as they are in America at martial arts. And in India, people are just as bad at meditating as they are here. He was talking about sitting in a big meditation hall with lots of people, and it's like the noisiest meditation that he was ever in. So when we meditate here, we meditate quietly. This is not the Indian style or American style. This is this dojo style of meditation. You sit still and quiet. And I was honestly, when in India, the only person that I saw meditating the entire time. I'm positive that people were meditating, but it's not like in my dreams where the roads are just lined with people meditating and there's everywhere. It's like a temple here and a temple there. There were cows all over the place, and stray dogs, like everywhere that you look. And it was really interesting. These cows just walking down the side of the street, and cars just like go around them. And everyone is very stressed when they're driving in India, is constant honking. And it's not like it is in America. If somebody honks at you here, they're kind of pissed off at you. There it's like, hi, beep, beep, like I'm here, beep, beep. And then that they're pissed if they like lay on the horn. But they're just kind of like, it's communication. But there are no lanes. Everyone just goes. It's kind of like driving in China, if you guys have been there, where I have no interest in driving in any of these countries because I'm positive that I would die instantly. Some of my friends and I had this genius idea that we were going to go rent scooters, like mopeds or like little motorcycles, and like ride through the countryside. And we got there, and on the way up, we were. This is the first time we were in traffic in the cars, and we were like, this is a little bit dicey. Like, people are zipping around, and there are cows that you have to watch out for, and cars that don't care about lanes or the right of way or any of that stuff. And so we were kind of a little bit concerned about it, and then it turns out that you're not legally allowed to ride unless you have a specific kind of license, which none of us had. And they're like, you can do it, but the police are going to pull you over and put you in jail or something. So we got out of that. But it was a quite busy, loud, stressful kind of place. And it's pretty interesting to think of this, this birthplace of meditation and kind of spirituality that's spread through the world. Even our philosophy that comes from Bodhidharma, a yogi who came to China and kind of invented martial arts and made meditation and physical exercise part of the whole thing. This all comes from India, and so this perception that we have of it is very different. And part of it is because we have ruined it. We, like in the West, just went in and colonized everybody and made everybody just really interested in money and driving fast and erratically, I guess. But the thing that I keep going back to thinking about is environment is stronger than will. And you can be in a place like the dojo that is very kind of controlled, purposefully peaceful environment, and it is certainly a lot easier to be calm and relaxed here, or in class when everything has this focused energy. It is very easy to be energized and to kind of have that kind of intentionality with your body and your mind. And if you try to do this same kind of thing in a different environment, it is very difficult. But you can also have your internal environment. So when I travel, whether I travel someplace that is inherently kind of calm and peaceful, or I travel someplace that's super loud and crazy, I recognize that, it's a little bit harder to, meditate or to be calm when everything is busy and loud around me, but I take my internal environment, which I have cultivated over the last 20 years of meditation and practicing martial arts, and that's pretty solid. It takes a lot to shake that. But what is really helpful is I just go in my hotel room, shut the door, and meditate there. Or the best place to meditate, you guys have heard me say, is the airplane. And when you're on a 30-hour journey, which is my trip back was 30 hours from door to door, you have plenty of time to sit and meditate because there is no place to go. So my last leg of the flight was 16 hours, and I just sat there. I got up one time, and that's more than I normally get up. I usually get up 0 times. I take the window seat, and I put like a little pillow behind my back, and I just sit there like a rock. And I meditate. It's some of the best meditation ever, because if my mind starts to go to, oh, what about this thing that you got to do? I just realize that it's not happening because I'm like 3 miles up in the air and I can't do any of that stuff. So just let it go, just sit. So environment's stronger than a will. And it's important for us to be able to create our environment. It's important for us to be able to decide what types of environments that we're in. I think that it's incredibly important and inspirational to travel to places that kind of have that kind of air to it. This was not really the experience that I had going. Where I went was Goa. If you guys know anything about Goa, it was actually a Portuguese colony, which was the strangest part of it for me, because I expected everything to be like really ancient. In my mind, all of India is like some other country. It's like, I imagine it's all like a jungle, and there are giant like statues and stone faces with vines covering them. It's probably from watching like an old version of the Jungle Book or something. And it's not like this, it was like being in Europe. It was like a bunch of churches. there were hardly any shrines actually in the place that I started off. But then the second city that I went to, we got on a 9-hour bus ride, which is another wonderful opportunity to meditate. And we did go to a huge temple for Shiva. And it was the second biggest statue of Shiva in the country, which is mind-boggling to me because the statue was absolutely ridiculously huge. It was the size of a skyscraper, and it was actually so far away that I didn't even get a chance to go up to it. It actually reminded me of my trip to Shaolin Temple, where I got all hyped about it. I went all the way to China, and I booked my tour, the bus trip to take me to Shaolin Temple, and I got all the way there, and by the time we finally got to the temple, we had 2 hours, and it was enough time for me to look at Buddha Dharma's cave, and then to have to just like get back on the bus, and that was it. So this was like a lot of running around and like, oh, there's something kind of cool that I see out the window. It'd be really nice to spend some time there. We get out, and we had 20 minutes at the temple to get out and kind of see stuff, but it was still beautiful experience. And the second city that we were in was Mangalore. If you guys have been following the news at all, you've noticed that stuff is going down in India. There was a law passed where the effect is that they're trying to basically take away citizenship from Muslims. And I'm way oversimplifying it, and I'm sure that I would be very flattered if somebody in India like censored this talk because of what I'm saying. But it's a lot of people rioting, a lot of social unrest because people are not happy about this. And so the city that I went to stay in for the second half of the trip was all on lockdown. The government actually shut down the internet, I believe, for the entire country. And then we were on curfew. So we were not allowed to leave the hotel. I got to the hotel, and I was there for 3 days, and I was allowed to leave for like an hour. I went on a walk, and then I came back, and that was it. And some people said, you walked outside? People told us that we would get shot if we left the hotel. So I walked out with two of my friends. We walked like 3 blocks down the street to find the closest and only temple that we could find. And we kind of like sat there and enjoyed it for a little bit, and then went back to the hotel. And it was crazy. We're there celebrating this wedding, and it's like a really nice party, and families all there, and everyone's really having a good time. And then on the news that we see in the TV right behind this event is like all these people rioting and getting shot, and it was not what I expected for that leg of the trip. I was thinking, well, most of the wedding stuff is over, so I'm going to be able to go out and be in the world and, buy some really cheap stuff, but all the stores were closed down. The furthest that I got to was to walk to the ATM to pull out cash so that I could come back and pay for my hotel room because the internet was down and they couldn't run my credit card. So that was the adventure. I think I heard a monkey like in a tree somewhere, and that was it. It was really weird because these cities are packed with millions and millions of people, but everyone was inside, and I was like one of the only people on the streets in this ghost town. It was very strange, and people were driving by looking at me like, what is this white person doing out here right now? He's crazy. So that was fun. A lot of my friends had people stopping and taking pictures with them and stuff. That didn't happen to me. Back to the wedding itself. As I said, it was the most like opulent thing that I've ever experienced. It was just a solid week of delicious food, and every day was like more of an impressive wedding than any single wedding that I've been to, and it was like that every single day. We would get there and there'd be like live bands. At the first event, there were 2 live bands playing at the same time. Like one was over here and the other one was over here, and all this food, and everyone was dressed up super fancy. And we're on a cliff overlooking the beach in Goa, this beautiful sunset. It was amazing. They built like a house for the wedding that you just walk through to take your picture in. And the second, what happened the second day? We had, that's where I got my henna. If you guys notice, this is henna. This is not just I forgot to wash my hand. So they were like doing that, and people were playing games on the lawn. We were playing tug of war and stuff like that. And then at night was a second huge party. Oh, this is the Sangeet. Do you have the Sangeet at yours? Where it's like a variety show where basically half the people at the wedding got on stage and were singing and dancing, and there was this choreographed dance that I was part of with like the groom and a bunch of the other guys, and some super talented people and some really untalented but really cute like little kids, and it was incredible. And this was under like a giant tent that was all like colorful ribbons and all incredible food. And the third day was the actual wedding, where we walked up to the place that the groom was staying, and all of these guys came around with drums and started drumming like crazy. At some point, somebody got behind me on a drum and like scooped me up on the drum, and he was like playing the drum with me on it. I'll show you the pictures, it's confusing. And there was mention of the groom riding on a giraffe, and I'm sure that that's actually impossible to make happen, but the way that this wedding was going, all of us were like, sounds about right. I'm pretty sure he's going to actually have a giraffe and ride in on it. There was no actual giraffe. He had like a stuffed giraffe, and he rode on a classic car. But we went to pick up, we went down to where the wedding was. The wedding was in this beautiful kind of like stadium seating place with like this gorgeous canopy of flowers, and on either side of it was a big screen, LED, like giant screen, because somebody came in with a camera and was like getting close-ups on the wedding ceremony, and they projected it up on the screen so that everyone could see what was going on, like you're at a sporting event. And the ceremony itself was really beautiful. I did not understand 90% of what was going on, even though they explained it. They were talking really fast in a very Indian accent, and I didn't get it. But it was quite beautiful. And that night we had the last kind of reception in the first city, which was everyone was wearing black ties and gowns and incredible food. I ordered the lobster, which I don't normally get, but I got 2 lobster tails that were like this thick each. And I don't know how much this wedding cost, but I'm going to assume it was like $1 million. And there were 400 people there. It was absolutely bonkers. So all of this to say, I'm trying to give you a picture of what this was like. For a lot of people there, was probably even more crazy than it was for me. But you can't help thinking like, this is a really interesting way to spend $1 million. And I don't mean that to complain or judge at all. In fact, I think that this is one of the best ways that you could spend an outrageous amount of money, is to throw this amazing party that most of us, I will certainly remember this for the rest of my life. And we love to spend our money on things. We need it to be something permanent that I can look at. And studies have shown that spending money on experiences, you end up with a lot more happiness overall from those things rather than buying things. You know, we're going to spend it on a couch, and then you just got to throw it away after a couple years because you sat on it so much. This is like to go on a trip, to travel, to experience something incredible like this, or to have a party with 400 people, and like, I know that on my deathbed, I'm going to be just running through my life, and I'm going to be like, yeah, there was that time that I went to that wedding in India, and I didn't know almost anybody there, but it was the most incredible party that I've ever seen. We get into different mindsets around money. And when I was a kid, I was 10 years old, 12 years old, something like that. I was just starting to get like a whiff of spirituality and like a sense of myself. Like, this is who I want to be, kind of aside from my family and society and all of this. And I said to my parents, I said, I reject your materialistic way of life. And my mom was like, what? And I didn't even remember saying that until years later. She reminded me, and I was like, that's a hilarious thing to say when you're a kid like that. But I get what I meant. Like, I don't want to be all about the money. I don't want to be all about, like, you know, saving money and like being afraid of spending money and like being a slave to money, which is what many of us end up being. Money is important. It is a tool that's necessary. If you're going to live in society, you need to have it. And it should not run you, right? Money is like, this is a weird analogy, I guess. Money is like emotions, or emotions are like money. You know, it's a tool that you use. Like an emotion, you can have an emotion and it can be a tool to help you, you know, to help kind of spur you into action, to help you really experience something or deal with something that you need to deal with. But it can also take over. Emotions can kind of drag you down and keep you in a state that is not helpful. And if you become a slave to your emotional state, then you're no longer able to turn it into action. You are just kind of stuck. And money can be the same way. You can spend all of your time and all of your energy trying to get more money and trying to save it and, you know, worrying about how am I going to get more and how am I going to be able to buy this or how am I going to be able to buy that. And look, I am not an expert on money at all. I know how to get enough to keep the lights on in the dojo, and that's about it. But I am an expert in not being a slave to money, and I've experienced that. There were years of my life where I would literally be afraid to look at my balance in my bank account, and I'm sure that some of you have been there at some point where it's like, I know it's going to be less or negative, so I'm afraid to look at it. And there were certainly times where I felt like really stressed about money and really feeling like it was not a tool that I was using, it was using me. And it is very difficult to live in our world, in our society, and to not kind of be used by money and not kind of be at the whim of or be a slave to this kind of, you know, capitalist, like I always need to get more, and it's all tied up in the cycle of desire where I need to get this and then that's not good enough, so I need to get to the next thing, and that's not good enough, so I need to get to the next thing. One of the nicest things about this wedding was it was so amazing over the top that I got rid of any notion of ever having a fancy wedding for myself. I'm just like, I am not going to do anything nice or expensive at all. I'm going to just go like into a field and just have it be done, and that's it. Feed people, barbecue, and go home, and it'll be really nice and fun. But like trying to do anything fancy after this is just a total waste. It's a non-start. And I think that is kind of a helpful way of looking at money and this cycle of desire in general. Is there's always going to be something bigger and better. The grass is always greener. And even if you get to that thing that you see as the next bigger, better thing, there is always something beyond that. So you want to be like, I forget who it was, the founder of PayPal or something, who said, like, I don't want to be a Ferrari guy, I want to be a Prius guy. I'm just going to get a Prius and drive it and not think about trying to get the next best, always having to get the better model, the newer, bigger, more impressive thing, because there's no end to that. So all that kind of goes to say, like, even though, I mean, you could have fed a lot of people. Well, I guess he did feed a lot of people at this wedding. But for $1 million, you could have done something. I'm sure there's some way you could look at it and say, should have done this, should have done that, could have, helped global warming or whatever else. And I'm super into all that stuff. And at the end of the day, if you are always kind of like crippled by, enslaved by, afraid of money, how to spend it, what to do with all that stuff, it's not helpful. That's no great way to live life. Have money, spend it, enjoy it. Spend it on people. Spend it doing things that you enjoy doing, things that you're going to remember doing for the rest of your life. And time and money are really the same thing. You only have so much time, and this is part of our practice is being able to be in the moment, being able to live in a way that we want to live, to be present for any moment of any day in any situation. And whether you're in America or you're in India or you're at the most incredible party, week-long wedding that you can imagine, or you're just sitting at home on the couch watching TV, it is all an opportunity to practice that. And I think that's everything that I had written down. I just like traveling places and recognizing that the more things change, the more they stay the same. And so we want to be able to be the way that we choose to be, the way that we want to be. In any physical place, in any emotional place, in any kind of situation in life, to be able to take that strong internal environment with us and be there and love it and enjoy it. And so that's what we're going to practice now. I talked for too long again. We're going to meditate and just practice being here, being in this moment. And I know I've painted just an amazing picture of the opulence of this wedding. Just let all that go. Don't think about me almost getting hit by cows on the side of the road in India. Just be with your breath, be in this moment, and enjoy. Sit comfortably.